Welcome to Lesson 2 of Week 6. We will be continuing our discussion on sustainable supply chains, and this week we're going to turn our attention to containerization as well as greenhouse gas emissions. As you would remember previously, we spoke about supply chain redesign in the face of a green revolution, and that green revolution is driven by four key areas, namely legislation, cost reduction, market pressure, as well as social responsibility to minimize environmental impact. So therefore, measuring the carbon footprint becomes an essential part of carbon trading and manufacturing operations, where businesses are often required to measure their exact emissions so that it can be determined whether or not they are in line with international guidelines. And in some cases, businesses can even be fined because, of course, greenhouse gas emissions are those that contribute directly to climate change. And such gas emissions can prove to be devastating to the environment, as we see sometimes with various levels of pollution. In the UK, the government department that's responsible for the environment provided detailed guidelines and tables online to calculate the carbon footprint. So effectively, they're using it as a measure of fuel used multiplied by the appropriate emission factor for the type of fuel used. So based on what you're using in your process, they would have an emission factor on their table that you could then use to calculate exactly what your emissions are. And the idea is that you should be as precise as possible in your measure so that the correct strategies can be implemented. And of course, we take, as we always say, a cradle to cradle perspective. And this figure from your textbook just shows you the carbon footprint for a container, a standard shipping container, all the way from the UK port, all the way down to the UK port to the customer, but originating at the Saudi plant to the Jeddah port. And it shows you the level of emissions. And you cannot just count it from the supplier to the end customer. You have to look at it from a life cycle perspective. So the main takeaway from this micro lecture is that sustainability efforts have to be examined from the perspective of the product life cycle. You cannot do it as a silo approach, and you cannot look at it on a one-sided basis. You've got to look at it holistically as a life cycle approach. I hope that you found this very short micro lecture interesting and informative. Please make sure to complete your readings as well as your quiz and your assignment, and I will see you for next week's micro lectures. Thank you.